Hello everyone to our first A Close-Up on Combat Clothing video. These have been a long time coming, but we're finally here and are going to kick things off with a uniform and camouflage that just about everyone knows of. In this one, we'll be looking at the ACU, or Army Combat Uniform. However, we're not just going to be breaking down the standard issue one, but rather a few interesting trial, prototype, and limited issue ones as well. Now, if you're not a fan of specifics and close-up details of uniforms, but rather the more general aspects of them, go check out the History of video talking about the ACU and UCP, as that covers its overall lifespan from a macro sense. So let's start with the standard ACU. Being that it was worn between 2004 and 2019, there are quite a few variations out there. Year to year and manufacturer to manufacturer, you'll notice small variations such as the colors and shapes of the inside tags, zippers being either glossy or matte in color, inside pockets on the pants being a solid color or sporting the UCP design, different colored Velcro, and so on. Covering all of those would be a very large undertaking, so for the sake of this video, we're just going to show off the common traits of them, at least up until 2008. The standard camouflage parts of the ACU consist of a jacket, pair of pants, boonie or sun hat as it's officially known, and a patrol cap. Starting with the jacket, it was made of 50/50 nylon cotton ripstop. It had a Mandarin style collar with a front flap to cover the opening by way of hook and loop or piles, aka Velcro fasteners. Below, the front section is closed by way of a zipper and flap, which again is fastened by various Velcro pieces. Towards its top is a small square to attach rank. On both sides of the zipper are two inwardly angled pockets, again closed by Velcro, with a strip of loops above them to attach name and branch tapes. On the upper sleeves by the shoulders are another set of pockets which include sections to add additional patches as well as a small IR square which can be concealed by way of a small nylon band. Moving down the sleeve is a large slot used for internal elbow pads. At the bottom are adjustable cuffs which again are secured by Velcro. Finally, the right sleeve sees a small open pocket separated into three sections to allow for pencils and pens. Regarding the pants, they are pretty straightforward. They feature both belt loops and an internal waist string to adjust the size. The fly is closed by way of 4 BDU style buttons. The sides of each leg see slightly angled cargo pockets closed by 2 sets of Velcro squares. Both include an internal elastic band to tighten the pocket if need be. Below those are 2 more sections for internal knee pads. At the bottom were 2 small pockets which are closed off by a single loop rectangle on the top flap and 2 smaller hook sections on the actual pocket. Below those, one could find an internal drawstring which allowed for the pant legs to be tightened around the wearer's ankles. Finally, the back had 2 upper pockets, both of which are closed by way of Bdu buttons. The hats didn't see much of a change from the ones issued with the Bdus and DCUs. Both were made up of ripstop 50/50 nylon cotton, seeing the boonie hat sporting 4 metal vents, 2 on each side, a small nylon adjuster strap, and a nylon band that wrapped around the hat to attach objects for various purposes. The patrol cap was very straightforward, allowing a rank patch to be sewn on the front with a piece of Velcro on the back to attach a name tape. So why did we do a quick but detailed breakdown of those pieces? Well, to showcase the changes that were tested with a select number of trial pieces, as they were sometimes very subtle and other times largely noticeable. Okay, so let's begin in 2008. It was around this time the Army had begun looking into adopting a new camouflage, as UCP was clearly not cutting it. Naturally, this gave them a great opportunity to update the cut of the uniform as well, specifically to address one loud and pressing matter. These pieces, simply identified as Test A, B, and C, saw alterations to things like fabric, reinforced areas, buttons, Velcro, and other small features, but not the actual camouflage pattern. Conducted by PEO-Soldier, these were limited to around 1,400 pieces and were issued to soldiers at Fort Bliss, Carson, and Lewis, to be used over the span of about 3 months. Test A pieces, consisting of a jacket and pair of pants, saw the fabric change to a twill made up of 52% nylon and 48% cotton. This was done to see whether a more stretchy fabric would be a better option as far as breathability and durability. That was the biggest change seen on them, but there were a few more subtle ones. With regards to the jacket, the first subtle change was the Mandarin style collar, which was altered slightly to allow it to be folded down easier, as earlier ACU collars were quite stiff. The shoulder pockets remained the same, but the amount of Velcro on the flap was slightly reduced, and the IR tab was moved from it to the actual cover strip. So essentially, rather than having it fixed and covered, it would be flipped around to be shown. Along the zipper, the Velcro tabs remained in the same position but saw the square shrunk by roughly 33%. Additionally, a small open-ended slot was added inside to allow additional pens and pencils. The pen pocket on the left side had its slots widened slightly and saw a flap added to the top, which was secured by a small strip of Velcro. And finally, the sleeve cuffs saw their Velcro adjusters completely removed and replaced with Bdu buttons. Moving down to the pants, there wasn't a whole lot changed. The biggest, aside from the fabric, was an extra reinforced crotch. Originals had most of the reinforcements on the left side of the fly, while this one saw it on both. Additionally, the cargo pockets remained the same in shape, but saw their Velcro replaced with Bdu buttons. Two were placed in the same location as the Velcro, while a third was added right by the elastic adjuster so that when tightened it would line up properly. Now moving on to test pieces B. Much like A, the fabric was altered. This time instead of 52-48 Nyko twill, they were 60-40. The only real difference was the usage of plastic snaps on the sleeve pocket flaps, as well as on the cuffs for adjustment. The inside cuff for pens saw more space on the flap itself versus test A, which saw a bit on both. The pen pocket was the original design as seen on standard ACUs, but saw it recessed into a full-fledged pocket, again with a flap closed by Velcro. The pants were the same, seeing the cargo pocket Bdu buttons replaced with the same style plastic snaps, again having a third added for when they were tightened. Now, let's look at the hats. Both referred to as Test C, they were made up of 60% nylon and 40% cotton twill, much like Test B uniforms, and that was more or less it. Uneventful, right? Well, by and large, the caps didn't really have too much wrong with them to begin with. Now, there are a few other minute changes done, such as stitch work and thread weight differences. Those weren't really noticeable physically, but were meant to help extend the life of the pieces overall. So, with all of these new features trialed, were any of them adopted? Yes, though not all at once, and not exactly as seen. Remember now, it's 2008, and UCP, and to a lesser extent the entire Army combat uniform, has more or less been disgraced as ineffective and in dire need of replacement. Right off the bat, the switch to twill fabric was not adopted, resulting in the 50-50 ripstop Nyko as well as FR or flame-resistant ACUs continuing production. The adjustment to the collars was overwhelmingly well received, 95%, so that was adopted in all new pieces going up through the current issue OCP uniforms. 3 out of every 4 soldiers preferred the IR tabs being placed on the nylon band rather than on the Velcro itself, and so that too was adopted. Now the interesting predicament of the pen pocket. Based on wearers' feedback between 2004 and then, these were in massive need of updating. Many complained that the size of the slots were too small to fit some items and too large for others, resulting in them easily falling out or getting snagged on something. As mentioned, 2 versions of pen pockets were seen. Although both were well received, neither modifications were adopted, as doing so was determined to add cost to the pieces and was simply shelved to be addressed at a later date. They mostly remained the same through the OEF-CP years and were finally adjusted with the new OCP uniforms, though not a whole lot was done as the slots were simply widened a bit while being cut down from 3 to 2. Up and down the front zipper, the reduction of Velcro was positively seen by 85% of participants, and so that too was approved for future uniforms. Now, what about the addition of buttons and the snaps? Well, the option of the plastic snaps were eliminated entirely. Just while filming this video, the amount of force to pull them apart was so great that it felt as if it would rip right out of the fabric or damage the pockets. Additionally, the sound of Velcro being undone has nothing on these snapping together or apart. The Bdu buttons, on the other hand, were another story. The ones added to the sleeves were practical and cut down on cost, however they were not initially adopted as the issue of not being able to fully adjust them to the size of the wearer's wrists could result in explosives and other debris shooting up the sleeves was brought up. OCP uniforms did finally see them reintroduced, though inverted so that they were buttoned from the inside rather than outside. Finally, the 3 added to the cargo pockets of the pants were also kept, as were the reinforcements seen in the crotch region. So what happened to these uniforms afterwards? Well, they were mostly kept by the soldiers that wore them and have since made their way onto the surplus and collectors markets. Due to the overall similarities between standard ACUs and these trial pieces, it's a bit hard to differentiate between them from a distance or among a large number of them. However, once you get a hold of one and feel the fabric or look at the tags, it's a dead giveaway. Since very limited numbers were made, they are a bit hard to come by, but do pop up on sites like eBay frequently. Usually individual pieces sell sell for around $100 to $130 US, with the patrol and sun hats going for about $30 to $60. The first round of changes were seen in ACUs as of 2010, but by that time quite a few were being made in OEF-CP, aka multicam, which brings us to our second UCP piece. Jump forward 1 year to 2009. A new round of testing was seen in Afghanistan with elements of the 4th Infantry and 82nd Airborne Divisions to determine a new camouflage pattern rather than a cut. This saw the debut of UCP-D, or Universal Camouflage Pattern Delta. These were tested alongside multicam uniforms, and as many know, it ultimately lost to it. Pieces were made in small quantities, about 1,000 uniforms, and issued on a brigade level. Though, over the years it seems that quite a few unissued pieces were produced and have slowly made their way onto the surplus market. The most common items were the ACU set, an ACH helmet cover, and a Molly 2 chest rig. Now, with a focus on just the jacket, they didn't see the changes adopted from the 08 trials as they were made before those updates came into effect. Just about all the ACUs were made with flame-resistant fabric, that being 65% rayon, 25% para-aramid, and 10% nylon. Just on a quick side note, an easy way to identify FR ACUs versus standard ones is to look for a small 1" by 1" nylon square sewn onto the left cuff of the jacket and left cargo pocket on the pants, though usually you can tell by the feel and look of the fabric, as it usually gives off a more worn and faded look. The tags didn't denote any difference between them and regular ACUs, save for the contract number, which is actually shared with the early multicam OEF-CP uniforms. With only 1,000 uniforms initially created, it is less abundant than the 2008 test pieces, but with the influx of unissued pieces, the exact number isn't quite known. Regardless though, they fetch more money as they're more sought after by collectors. Generally, prices will vary, and quite often ones found online will either be brand new unissued ones still with tags, or slightly used ones that were more than likely field used, such as the one seen here. On average, expect to pay anywhere from $150 to $300 for the jackets or pants, $100 to $200 for the helmet cover, and $100 to as much as $500 for the Molly 2 chest rig. These prices do fluctuate from time to time, but keep in mind as each year passes they only seem to become more scarce, thus more expensive. Now, this brings us to our final piece in this video. After the 2010 field tests, OEF-CP was adopted, though only briefly, being replaced by Scorpion W2, aka OCP, not long after. Again, you can check out our video on that for the full breakdown. With the introduction of yet a new pattern came the creation of a new uniform cut. Though still technically referred to as the ACU, this cut saw quite a few changes done to it. Alterations to the jacket included an updated collar, which was much easier to fold down, a shorter front zipper, an entire shoulder pocket overhaul which featured a larger pocket and single piece of Velcro which was closed by way of a side zipper. The IR tab was moved above, hovering independently. The slots for internal elbow pads were closed off and simply made into reinforcement points. The sleeve cuffs were closed by way of Bdu Buttons, as mentioned earlier, and finally the pen pocket was shrunk down to 2 slots. The pants, on the other hand, saw the removal of the internal adjustment waistband. The cargo pocket saw the removal of the elastic adjuster string, as well as seeing the flap increase in size. The internal knee slots were closed off, much like the jacket, and finally the lower leg pockets were closed by way of a single Bdu button. Generally, as these rolled out, they were sporting the new Scorpion W2 pattern. However, a few were made with the UCP design. Though the reason for it isn't specified, it was more than likely done to use up remaining UCP fabric certain manufacturers had, as the pattern remained an option for soldiers to wear until October of 2019. Aside from original hanger tags which specify it as ACU UCP, there seems to be no difference in its classification from the W2 versions. Though we only have the jacket in the collection, pants in this updated cut with the UCP print are very likely to exist as well. The Army Combat Uniform and Universal Camouflage pattern have come a long way since their introduction in 2004. Though we didn't cover all the versions of them out there, these are some of the more prevalent and significant ones, as they helped with the creation of the current US Army, Air Force, and most recently Space Force uniforms that continue to be worn today. And with that, we've come to the end of our first CCC video, that being a close-up on combat clothing. Hopefully a few new things were learned, and any collectors out there now know what to look for when searching for these pieces, be they experimental or otherwise. Be sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be informed whenever we upload in the future, or just check back for more videos right here on Uniform History.